Hi, my name's Jame, and welcome to day 10 of my Build a Day challenge. Yesterday, we built this New Year's Day festival inspired by Japanese stuff with lots of stories and whatnot. And before we move on any further, just going to let you guys know that OBS failed me again and did not record my mic audio, so I'm overdubbing today. But other than that, the build went quite well today. The prompt was to build a convenience store, so that's what I went with. It's a little bit simpler than the builds we've had in the past couple of days, but it still took a fair amount of time. I'm just going to be building it in this sort of area around here, and I'm going to be doing a fairly simple palette, focusing mainly on some solid colors, similar to what you'd actually get in a suburban area. It's a bit hard to commentate over this when I'm not actually speaking it. In the next clip, I've decided on my palette as a whole. I didn't follow this incredibly strictly. I didn't use the per slabs too much, but I used most of these blocks. I used the white concrete as the main block for the actual structure, and the sandstone for sort of a secondary block. The red glazed terracotta I used for the sort of quote-unquote logo, and the red nether brick and oxidized copper, I used both of those as a sort of highlight color. What I didn't include in this is I was also using some concrete blocks as well. I mostly used green, orange, and red concrete. But yeah, in the next clip here, I'm working towards just putting in the basic structure and also adding a few extra details because the basic structure was just a rectangle. So you'd seen here that I've built the front of the actual thing along with the rectangle involved. I included that strip along the top that is supposed to be some sort of logo similar to what you'd see in a 7-Eleven, that sort of thing. And once I move back down, I'll explain my choice of doors. I used acacia doors because I would have preferred using some sort of like glass sliding door, but instead there isn't anything like that in Minecraft without using pistons, and there wasn't very much space on the inside. What I was explaining before then as well was that I used the red and orange concrete instead of using the slabs that I had in the palette, just because it added a bit more color that I think was going to be needed. And as you can see here, I'm explaining the doors and why I couldn't use anything else, even though it doesn't quite fit the palette of the actual build. As you can see, also I did this sort of overhang balcony-looking thing, veranda, don't know what you'd call it. And yeah, with the rest of the walls, the other three, it's a bit tough to know exactly what to do because they're probably just going to end up being flat white concrete, and they do end up being pretty much that by the end of the build. So I spent the next couple of minutes trying to figure out if there's anything interesting I can do, perhaps put some graffiti in, and here you can see that the answer was no, I couldn't figure that out. I did put some holes for some windows on the inside, because I decided that if I can't figure out exactly what to do, I'm just going to give up and do it later. So I decided that I'm going to move on and do the interiors. So as I said, I put some window slits in, and I just thought it would make sense to have a bit of natural light go into the building. And the roof, I decided I probably wasn't going to do a huge amount with, but if I was going to do anything, it'd be actually making it a little shorter. I didn't end up doing this, but I think perhaps I could have if I had a bit more space on the actual interior. I could just get the scaling a little bit better. It currently seems like there's a very, very high ceiling, which doesn't quite work out. I was discussing here what I'm going to do with the floor. I decided that I'm going to use quartz blocks because it sort of has this tile effect. It's just me placing a bunch. And I also worked on the rest of the interior. As you can see, this is pretty much the finished interior. I did a fair amount of work with putting in some fluorescent lights and some shelves. Shelves are a bit hard at this scale because it's hard to put stuff in. I I had to use looms and bookshelves here to show drinks coolers. You got to do some suspension of disbelief to remember that they're not actually books. These shelves are just some slabs, so you can't really put much on them. Item frames will disappear and break if you put them on slabs when there's another slab above it as well. It needs a full block space for some apparent reason, at least as far as I could tell. So I didn't end up putting anything there. They're not too well supported. I could have used a debug stick to get that, but I decided it wasn't quite worth the effort. I also put this other one here that I did have some space to put some item frames and a flower pot just to show something there. This is the bench top that I used for the counter. Just red nether brick and some trapdoors. I also used the leather and a wither skeleton skull just to show the cashier's stuff, like a screen and perhaps the things they need to actually be able to handle money. This is me talking about the sort of fluorescent lights using end rods. I think that turned out quite nice. And here, you can see that I put some note blocks in, sort of an entrance sound. And I think that worked out really quite nicely. So yeah, what I'm saying here is that I had to deal with the outside. I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. It was a choice of either do some stuff based off of actually adding stuff to the build, or alternatively putting stuff around the outside, things like bushes and perhaps a rubbish bin, dumpster sort of thing, and just add some extra details that don't actually change the look of the build, but just change how well it fits into the landscape. I ended up going with the second option there of putting things on the roof, like air conditioning units and an antenna. So you can see that in this clip. I put some bushes along the side and also the back. The back has some birch leaves just to show that they're a little bit less well kept than the other side, just because the back, less people come to. I also put a maintenance ladder that leads up to the top floor, the rooftop, with iron bars and iron trapdoors, as well as these air conditioning units and the aerial for some sort of television that you might need in there. Along the other side, I also put a dumpster that I think looks quite nice. It's just the third stage of copper with some black carpet on top. But yeah, that was pretty much the end of the build. I didn't do anything else with it after that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any feedback, let me know. And as usual, thank you very much.